Yeah, I am ready, sir.
What about people from Bangalore? I think have they given connection? Hello. Have you got the connection from Bangalore?
From Bangalore, sir. Bangalore. No, no, sir, not yet.
Not yet. Usually they delay. I don't know why. I just speak to Mandula and.
Share this. This one. This will be seen on the full screen. Yes. Okay. No.
Mandula, I'm from Dr. Balraj. Dr. Balraj from Hyderabad. I mean, this has not been connected. Usually it's getting delayed. We are ready here by 3:30, but most of the times you are not giving connection.
అంటే మీతో వాళ్ళు డిస్ప్లే పెట్టండి అర్థమవుతుంది లేదా ఫుల్ స్టాక్ అనేది కూడా అర్థం కాదు అంటే ఇటు వచ్చేటట్టు సో దట్
Dr. Anjali, I just requested the Bangalore people to give connection. They are on the job. Huh?
Okay, sir. Okay, sir. No issues, sir. No problem.
Senior radiologist from Somatical Management Hospital. He did, let me have the privilege of introducing him. He did his MBBS from Nagpur University, Nagpur, MD from Gujarat, and worked at St. Stephen's New Delhi as a senior registrar, and has got fellowship in advanced imaging, NIMS Hyderabad, and is a consultant radiologist at Mafraq Hospital, Abu Dhabi, and presently he is HOD and senior consultant with a vast experience, number of research and publications, and his areas of special interest is musculoskeletal imaging and interventions and neuroradiology. See, is the topic we have chosen. We have asked him to, we have requested him to deliver the chest X-ray and then basic interpretations. Most of us are not that good while evaluating an X-ray, and this will be more useful those who are working in periphery where there are only X-ray facilities without other gadgets. So in such situations, it is very important to know how to read an X-ray to come to a conclusion. So I invite now Dr. Anjani Kumar to deliver his talk on this chest X-ray, the basic interpretation, and anything, the history and other things. So I request Dr. Anjani Kumar to go ahead with his talk.
Sir, thank you, sir, for your kind words. So basically, when sir has requested us to take a topic on chest X-ray, so we thought we wanted to teach students who are exam going basically how to interpret a normal chest X-ray and basically not missing on the regular basic findings which they frequently face during their clinical practice in future or while attempting the examinations. So basically as chest X-ray, we all know it is most frequently requested examination all over the world in all over the hospitals everywhere. It's a basic investigation. So wanted to basically speak some brief history regarding how X-rays were invented, then how it has revolutionized the field of medicine, and taking it forward. Almost it is like 125 years from now. Then further, how the technology has evolved and where are we now. So this is the topic I'm going to speak today, and how do we interpret all this. So basically, he's Professor Wilman Conrad Röntgen. So the X-rays. Hello, can you hear me, sir?
Yes, sir. You can continue, sir, please.
Yeah. So basically, Professor Wilman Conrad Röntgen, he's a German by birth, and he studied. He taught many European universities. In 1895, on November 8th, he has discovered an unknown ray while he's doing his experiment in his lab. So this was his earlier days of his labs. Basically, these are the tubes, glass tubes, where he was studying on electromagnetic radiation. So he used to pass high voltage currents through the rarefied gas tubes, and to study where the radiation is extending from the metallic plates. So accidentally one day while he was conducting experiment in his lab, so he discovered something was glowing far beyond where he was doing his experiments. Basically, it is like a photobromide barium crystals which are glowing one of those plates which were kept away from the tube. And suddenly he covered the tubes with on a black box, but still when he switched off the lights, still the rays are penetrating and emitting on the plates. So then he thought, why not we'll see, can this rays pierce the objects? And this was one of the first X-rays which he took on his wife, and this was the year this was the ring on the finger of hers. This was in November 8th, 1895. And subsequently, he started to do more experiments of the rays. Now today, where they are preserved in University of Munich, and regarding his old lab, still now it is a site where people regularly often visit. For his immense recognition of extraordinary services, he was rendered by discovery of remarkable rays and subsequently named after him. Then he got Nobel Prize. He's one of the first Nobel Prize laureates where for his he was recognized and was given a Nobel Prize in 1901. And not wasting much time on it, now we are going to extend how the older X-ray missions with the lead casing used to look like, on how we used to shield from the lead sheets. And these are the regular operating missions which were there. So, and today's world, now you have a single robotic arms like X-rays where you try to, everything is digitalized and it just flows through the workstations. Even your voltages are automated on regarding the human bodies. So these are the new X-ray digital working machines where how they look like, and these are the mobile units. Now mobile units, you can directly see the radiograph or X-ray at the bedside itself. The technician need not go down and go into the radiology lab and see it. Now you can see X-rays on bedside. Suppose if you're putting a central line, or if you're putting a nasogastric tube, you can see then and there itself. So any complications or any abnormal placements of the lines, and this can all be Wi-Fi through your hospital networks. Then moving forward in the history of X-rays, now the cath labs where radiation is immensely used today to put a lot of deployment of a lot of cardiac stunts to day-to-day practice and do a lot of interventions using cath labs. Then neuro interventions, of course, now where you are now unblocking the vessels and removing the thrombus and coiling of aneurysms. And as far as we know, the orthopedicians were using this race in the form of C-arms to O-arms, like fixing spines and bones for the trauma patients and regular patients as well. And moving forward further, they took the single ray X-ray into different modalities levels. Now we are using CAT scans in all the departments, and there are mobile CAT scans which are happening everywhere. Then also in the low dose radiation where you do mammograms. Further going into the high energy rays, now treating patients using radiation beams for cancer patients, and is also used in veterinary science. Now they started using robotic X-ray arms for imaging the animals. And day to day, I think many of us come across aviation industry for your safety of travel. We do a lot of X-rays there, and even the trade which is going between countries at borders where all the containers are X-rayed for the safety of the country and defense issues. So basically, this is what a single ray since last 125 years was transformed to the day where we are using it immensely. And it's available everywhere across the world. So people are getting treated and the clinical questions are answered. And how all it started is basically before interpreting a basic plain chest radiograph on X-ray, these were the initial experiments which are conducted, how the densities are seen on an X-ray. So this is the test tube. They put one of the phalanx inside the test tube and filled it with water. And on the top, they put a fat there. Then on the fat, this is they left it with a normal air, and they put one metallic densities as well. So when they did an X-ray, these are the different shades of gray you see, from darker to the lighter and denser gray. So the water looks like grayish, and bone looks off-white or significantly white, and the fat light gray, and air darker. When the rays pass through through the human body, when you're taking a chest radiograph, you'll see, you need to remember this density, how normal densities on a chest radiograph look like, and metallic densities will be significantly bright. So straightforward, how chest rays in recognizing the abnormality. Before recognizing any abnormality on a chest X-ray, you need to know what is normal. Yeah. So the normal X-ray, you can see whatever we are trying to see. Initially, when you look at a chest radiograph, you'll try to see which side is what. I mean, usually they're marked as a left or a right with the markers by the radiology technologists. And then you'll see a thoracic bony cage, which is what you've seen, which is bright or off-white. And then the bones, the thoracic bones, and followed by your heart in the center. Then the lower thoracic vertebrae should be visible regarding the quality of the X-ray, and you can see the trachea and the main bronchi, so, and the hilar regions, and the lungs will be usually darker, and this is lighter gray is the subcutaneous soft tissues. And regarding anatomy is concerned, the basic anatomy, normally you see the trachea in the central where you see the spinous processes. And these are the clavicle heads where you see the clavicle heads are equidistant from the spinous process. And this is the trachea, which is bifurcating into right main bronchus and the left main bronchus. Main bronchus, which is darker because it contains of air. Then the carina, right hilum, along with the inferior pulmonary artery. This is the aortic knuckle or knob where the aorta turns, arch of aorta turns while it is descending, and the left pulmonary artery, left inferior pulmonary artery. Then cardiomediastinum is formed from the right atrium and the left ventricle because of the orientation of the heart. And these are the clavicles. Then you need to look at the cardiophrenic angles or costocardiac angles, what you call, and costophrenic angles. These are the sulcal spaces there. You need to look at the domes of the diaphragms. This is a normal chest X-ray or a PA view where you try to see the normal chest X-ray. Then chest X-ray are usually not fully completed without the lateral one, but most of them nowadays, unless we want only, we try to ask for it, but they have become far less. So on a lateral, you'll try to see anterior, medial, and posterior mediastinums. So how do we interpret? We need to have a systemic approach while assessing a chest radiograph, and always while interpreting, just ask about in conjunction with the clinical findings, like suppose someone comes with a breathlessness to the ER, and you need to talk to them since how long is breathless, does he has a cough, fever. Based upon that, you try to answer your clinical questions on the chest radiograph. So whenever you're taking a chest radiograph, these are the things you need to look at. And like I always try to go for an approach like saying A, B, C, D, E, F, basically always trying to assess the airways first, like the main bronchus, trachea, is it central shifted towards right or left? Then B for bones, look at the bony cage. Are there any fractures? Are there any lytic lesions on the bones? And C for the cardiomediastinum. Basically looking at the heart borders, any enlargements, displacements, and the aorta. Then D for the diaphragm. D for the diaphragms. And E for air elsewhere. Like if you're looking for a pneumothorax, pneumomediastinum, or surgical emphysematous along the chest walls. So E for E for the air elsewhere. Then F for the foreign bodies, looking at metallic objects, foreign bodies on the chest X-ray. So, and L for lungs will be the last thing. Try to evaluate the lungs at the last time, because most of us tend to see the lungs first. And when we see some abnormality, we are stuck at that. We try to lose your concentration, which is happening around the chest X-ray. So this is the normal chest X-ray where you don't have any rotations because the clavicles are equidistant and the spinous process are in the midline. And barely you can see the lower thoracic ribs. That means it's a good quality radiograph. Then look at the sternum always for the sternal wires, any history of prior histories like CABG or thoracic surgeries where you try to look at for the sternal wires or metallic objects. Then so why the side is so important, while the radiographer has mentioned the side as a right. So this is an actual position of the radiograph where you can see the heart is towards right side. So it is shifted towards the right side. It's in dextrocardia, and situs inversus, where the gastric bubbles you're seeing on the below the right hemidiaphragm, and the liver shadow is shifted towards left side. Locating congenital anomalies, this will help us. And because always we try to see the gastric bubble on the right side. So whenever you're looking at in an emergency radiographs, you try to look at the gastric bubble. It's on the left side below the hemidome of diaphragm. Now you can see another air collection which is collected below the right dome of diaphragm. So this is called pneumoperitoneum, where on a chest radiograph, day-to-day clinical practice, where someone comes with an acute abdominal pain into ER, and when you take a chest radiograph on an erect radiograph position, you'll see gas under the dome of diaphragm, so that it warns you that there is a pneumoperitoneum. So these are the things, your x-rays, these are a kind of radiographs which will be put up for examinations, for a basic evaluation, not missing these signs. And another chest radiograph as well, where you can see a bowel loops, dilated bowel loops below the domes of the diaphragms with air fluid levels. And can you see another pneumoperitoneum which is extending towards the left side? This is also called as continuous diaphragm sign, where you have a pneumoperitoneum inside the abdomen, where hollow viscous perforation. But rest of the findings in this chest radiographs are fine. You can see the trachea dividing into right and left main bronchus. You can see the hilar angles which are preserved, and the lung vascular markings which are preserved. So again, when we are going to examples, few of the things while you're reading the chest radiographs, look at normally the normally the aortic arch is located on the left side. And some of the patients do have aortic arch on the right side, which is an anomalous, which is not going to significantly hamper any clinical outcomes. Only you can see there is aortic arch which is on the right side of the trachea. So basically, when you're assessing this, how a normal chest radiograph looks like with an abnormal hilar angles and the right aortic arch, and you can see the stomach bubble. Normally, you don't see any air below the right dome of the diaphragm because the liver is occupying the entire right hemidiaphragm. And where it will be very useful while you're looking at day-to-day bedside or ER chest radiographs is the central venous lines, lines and tubes, what we call, where the tips are located, and are they normally placed and abnormally placed. So this is a bedside AP chest X-ray, where normally in AP films the heart is usually magnified because it is closer to the beam, and and you can see the right central venous catheter, which is in the superior vena cava. Its tip is located in a normal position. Then you can see the endotracheal tube, which is at least 2 centimeters away from the carina. So these are the normal placement of the lines, which you see in day-to-day radiographs. And second, if you can see, this is one of the central venous catheters. Then there is a nasogastric tube going down below the dome of the diaphragm. Then there is a pigtail draining catheter. So these are the chest leads, what you're seeing. So normally, when you're looking at a ICU or a critical care radiographs, you need to make sure you remember what are the normal positions of the lines. And if you can see how catastrophes happen day to day in our medical practices. So you can see directly the endotracheal tube going into the right main bronchus. It is inflated well, and the left lung is underinflated, and basically there was edema set in because of underinflation and a collapse of the left lung. And while most of the people who are putting nasogastric tubes, so you can see there's an example where nasogastric tube is seen along the right lower lobe of the lung. With when you start feeding them, you can see fluid accumulating within the lungs, and patients do develop infections. These catastrophes can be avoided while reading bedside chest X-rays, and some of the hospitals in abroad has made it a mandatory practice. Suppose if you insert a nasogastric tube, you need to, it's mandatory to take a chest radiograph then and there in the bedside and document it, because the guideline says that the tube's positions and even the endotracheal tubes, even the central venous catheters, intra-aortic balloons, when you're praying in emergency critical units. So not only about the metallic wires and all you used, and it can also diagnose fractures of the pacemaker leads after doing pacing, after doing cardiac chamber pacings. You can see the fractures of the pacemaker leads. So the single most chest radiograph is so valuable in diagnosing many things. So that's why the position is important. Quality of the radiograph is important, and penetration of the X-ray beams is important before you're interpreting the PFUs. Basically, some anatomy regarding this is much more penetrated view where you can see all the vertebral bodies. Now, how will we diagnose some of the things as we are looking at the radiographs? So everyone will be seeing at the paratracheal stripe widening when they're looking. If it is widened due to lymph nodes, or due to rupture of the blood vessel, so, or dilated esophagus, some of the things like in achalasia and all, this even superior vena cava is dilated. So all these things will be widened. So usually this is the trachea, this is the airway. If you can see, there is a stripe. If you can compare the left and right side, the stripe is thick, thickened here. When we do a penetrated view, you can see a right paratracheal stripe. And this is the right inferior lobar pulmonary artery, right atrium, right border of the heart, left ventricle, left border of the heart. And these are the paraspinal lines. So if you're seeing any paraspinal abscesses, lesions, neurogenic lesions, this line will be disrupted and you will be seeing soft tissues there. So I'll come across it in a later talk regarding hidden areas. Then zygoesophageal recess, not many radiographs we see unless you take a penetrated view. Then left pulmonary trunk, usually higher than the right. And this is the right main bronchus, which has a steep angulation, and left main bronchus will have a little bit upward angulation. And this is the aortic knuckle. So when you're looking at the cardiomediastinum, you need to see what are the pulmonary vessels which are coming from the top, and this is the pulmonary artery. They form a hilar angle. So can you see like a hilar angles? This is so important while you're interpreting the hilar on a chest radiograph. And coming to cardiothoracic ratios, usually, as we say, heart occupies 50% of maximum intrathoracic diameter. When you take the whole thoracic diameter, then you should need to, the heart should be more than the diameter of this, like five times more than the diameter of this. Then only we say cardiomegaly in a proper PA view. In AP views, as the heart and mediastinal structures are magnified, we don't try to comment on the supine radiographs. So these are the normal orientations of the heart, how they look. But where we can't see is the left atrium. We can't see the left atrium because it's hidden over the right atrium. And and these structures, right ventricular, are hidden under the left ventricle. And atrial appendage, sometimes we'll see like a normal marking here. Basically, how the heart is oriented, just pictorial representation. Every chamber we can't see. So these are the hilea which are located like this, where the inferior pulmonary arteries, which come left pulmonary artery, is usually higher, and these are the draining pulmonary veins. So you can see the right and the left pulmonary arteries. So right pulmonary artery and left pulmonary artery, when you're taking radiographs on the lateral aspects, you can see how they are on the higher side. So basically, regarding cardiothoracic ratios, more than 0.55 in adults on a PA view, any increase in transcardiac diameter more than 2 centimeters compared to the old X-rays. Always make a practice that whenever the patient, they come to you, just ask for the old radiographs. Can it throw some information regarding the old radiographs? And it really helps helps you while reviewing his clinical outcomes. Nowadays, even we don't need to measure cardiothoracic ratios. The new automated softwares which are coming and where we are with the help of artificial intelligence, where the chest X-rays of certain age groups are pre-fed into the system. The system will evaluate and pre-read it, and it gives the volumes, it gives you the thoracic ratios, everything is automated, and it'll have a deep learning and a machine learning. So the patterns, it will try to start, and automatically it will give the ratios. So briefly, some of the higher issues which I'm going to talk is the regular day-to-day clinical practice, where when someone comes to ER with an MI or breathlessness. So basically, you're trying to see a radiograph where you can see there is an increase in back pressure within the pulmonary vessels. And these pulmonary vessels are larger in diameter than the vessels which are facing lower down. So this is called cephalization of the vessels, where it is an initial phase of pulmonary edema. Then you'll have a effusion, like in the form of thickened pleura, all due to back pressure changes. Then curly B lines, which are lines seen at the lower lobe of the chest, which are peripherally located and 2 to 3 centimeters in longitudinal length. So these are the curly B lines, increased cardiothoracic ratio, and unfolding of aorta. All these changes you'll see in an early stage of pulmonary edema, where patient is having an MI. It's one of the early stages. Normal hilar angles are disrupted here. Everything is blown up out of proportion in the hilar regions, where there is an increased vasculature, pulmonary vasculature. In the hilar regions, cardiac diameter is increased, and slowly there is fluffy shadows developing in the alveoli. The same thing, cephalization of the vessels, and enlarged cardiothoracic ratio, and loss of hilar angles. Basically, these are the pathological basis where the heart is enlarged, and even the angulation of the left main bronchus will be more horizontal when the heart is enlarged in size. So you have multiple phases in it: vascular, hilar fullness, interstitial phase is your curly venous, and alveolar phase, where all the back pressure starts developing into the alveoli, and alveoli, when they're at this stage, even the heart may be returning to the normal size. That is where the pulmonary edema patterns develop in X-rays. So these are again the curly B lines. This is how you need to see in the periphery. If there is an effusion already set in, pleural effusions, then this will be obscured. And this is the acute MI patient with pulmonary edema with alveolar densities or opacities, which are filled with a fluid and what we call as a butterfly distribution. Then when we are coming to mediastinum, apart from the heart, you have hilar vascular structures. You need to look at the mediastinal widening, and you need to assess where the trachea is central or deviated towards right or left side. Basically, these are what we call the little fingers of the pulmonary arteries, inferior pulmonary arteries. They'll be joined by the pulmonary veins. And now you can see the angulations. They should be a normal hilar angulation should be there. And mediastinal widening, I was talking earlier, where you see where trachea is in central, clavicles are equidistant. If there is a rotation, sometimes the aorta will mimic in the form of soft tissue. So when the clavicles are equidistant from the spinous process, so you can see there is a hilar mediastinal widening. So what do you interpret by seeing this radiograph? These are the kind of x-rays do you get in exams. When you see a mediastinal widening, first thing you need to think of lymphadenopathy or anything dilated aortic trunk there or ascending aorta. Then any vascular, first is soft tissues like lymph nodes, then thymic origins, any abnormal thymic enlargement. Sometimes the structures which are coming from the neck into the superior mediastinum are thyroid, all the and anything like tumors like teratomas. So all these things to be kept in mind. And if you're seeing a soft tissue density, lymphomas. So all these things should be in a differential diagnosis list when you're seeing a superior mediastinal widening. So some of the examples like hilar widening and mediastinal widening is like sarcoidosis. This is the different stages of sarcoidosis where we tend to see right hilar paratracheal stipe widening due to mediastinal lymphadenopathy. The hilar are widened because of the mediastinal lymphadenopathy. You can see this, both the hilars are widened with reticular abnormalities in lower down. Basically, lung pattern involvement, nodular lung pattern involvement in sarcoidosis. So usually due to lymphadenopathy and the vessels. So you need to take into consideration, is it a vascular enlargement or is it due to enlargement by the lymph nodes? So those differentiations you need to be made by the shadows. Here, there is some amount of vascular enlargement and you can see cephalization of the vessels. Cephalization of the vessels. So sometimes you can see it's on vascular and with the coexisting mediastinal lymphadenopathy. So these are like, you have so many variations. There's the list, lot of list in bilateral, where you see bilateral hilar enlargements and unilateral enlargements. So coming to a few of the cases where I'll discuss is, you're seeing a chest radiograph where there is a lot of mediastinal widening, which is going till to the down. Can you see it's going beyond below the dome of diaphragm? So which is the structures which, apart from trachea, which will be ending up in the midline, only one structure located in the posterior mediastinum is esophagus. So you'll see in such kind of patients who come with dysphagia, they will be showing a dilated tubular structure, the esophagus, in examples like ecclesia cardia. So rest of the things on the chest X-ray will be normal. Then the other structures where you see aortic aneurysms or descending thoracic aortic aneurysms, how they will be dilated. And this you can see as if the marker denotes saying AP supine mobile view, where you see the left hemithorax is completely opacified with fluid. Then there is enlargement of aorta there. Then there is cephalization of the vessels, congestion is there. So in this sort of X-rays where, beyond ER also, sometimes the patients may not make it to ER, the ICUs or the surgical OTs, because usually by the time the aorta ruptured, and these are This is a film of aortic rupture with massive pleural effusion and a dilated aorta. So these are the emergency radiographs. You need to look why the structure is white and globular and what is happening here and why the patient is breathless. As far as lungs, which we thought we'll address at last, are like you divide on a chest radiograph, seeing into upper zone. There is no clear-cut demarcation. At the center of the hilar will be the mid zone and lower zones, because all the lung, what you're seeing is where right lung has 3 lobes. All the posterior part of the right lung is morally hidden posteriorly, and the right middle lobe occupies the anterior part of the chest X-ray. Vis-a-vis left, you have left and right with the lingular segments. So you need to look at the zones of the film. Compare the zones, look for the ribs from lung details and what is behind the heart, what is in the epiphysis and all. So basically on the bones, I already talked what to look. And diaphragms, position of the gastric bubble, I already talked. So regarding when you're, these interpretations make significant clinical remarks on the outcomes. And always look for the soft tissues, lung epiphysis and domes of diaphragms. These are the soft tissues in the supraclavicular fossa. Sometimes you try to look where these fat planes are obliterated. This dark slight grayish fat planes are obliterated. In this, you try to look for any soft tissue masses, lymph nodes, nodal enlargement, and those are the things. And in case of trauma, you'll see, try to look for surgical emphysematous changes. Where the surgical emphysematous changes air in the subcutaneous soft tissues, you try to look for the rib fractures and pneumoperitoneum under the domes of the diaphragms. So basically, how do you summarize all this? Is when you're reading a radiograph, in the exam itself, you try to look at the tracheas in central, the hilar, cardiomediastinal structures are normal, and bilateral, well-aerated lung fields, which are normal, and no abnormality seen under the dome of the diaphragms or retrocardiac regions. If you can just summarize it, that will be fine, if you can able to read a normal radiograph. Bones, regarding certain examples where they come with neck pain and upper limb pains, wasting of the upper limbs, you try to look for cervical ribs. These all can be diagnosed on single chest radiographs. And look at the spine, spinal deformities. Normally try to look at the gastric bubble. So basically summarizing erect chest X-ray of adult male, where why we said adult male is you don't see often the breast shadows. So the heart is not enlarged, mediastinal contours are normal, and the lungs are clear. Normally, that in short, you can discuss with your examiners. Various approaches, systemic approaches, various people follow inside out, outside in. It's up to you how you are trained. Already talked about the paracept lines and anatomy. And the most important thing while reading a chest radiograph is you try to look for the hidden areas. Hidden areas are like bilateral apical regions of the lungs, hilar regions, and retrocardiac regions, and domes of the diaphragms. So these are what we call hidden areas: apical zones, hilar zones, retrocardiac zones, and zones below the dome of diaphragm. For every clinician, they try to have their eyes on these zones, so that if you have eyes on these zones, you'll never miss anything. You won't require a radiologist's help while interpreting this radiographs. Because why we say, because most of the posterior lobe of the lung, of the right lung, is always overlapped by the liver shadow. In this case, where you're seeing a denser soft tissue, where you can see the normal X-ray as interpreting the normal. When you did a CAT scan, you can see there is a soft tissue density. This is the lung mass where you can easily get missed on this chest X-ray. So always remember, there is quite amount of big lung behind the domes of the diaphragm, where you will see on a lateral radiographs. So basically, a normal chest radiograph, looking at various age groups, the middle age, younger age groups, how the aorta is oriented, little bit older age groups, how the aortic knuckle has become and where it's become unfolding. Much more elderly age groups where you tend to see a prominent knuckle. These are all normal variations on a chest X-ray. A female radiograph, how will you tell, is by looking at the breast shadows. They're also important between differentiating. And few of the examples are like what you see on a regular radiographs are consolidations, then interstitial markings, masses, nodules, and eclectic changes. So, I mean, explaining each and everything in normal chest radiograph talk will be very difficult because as it is very wide. So now basically you're seeing a well-defined solitary pulmonary nodule. When you see such kind of nodule, ask for a previous radiograph. If it is the same, it may be normal, it may be a small bronchogenic cyst lying in the lung, or a mass lesion. So this is how a solitary pulmonary nodule look, which will be surrounded by air. Then there is another chest radiograph. You are seeing multiple nodular deposits within both the lungs. Commonly we see in metastatic CA breast, metastatic renal cell carcinoma, then metastatic testicular tumors and thyroid, so on and so forth, if you're seeing multiple nodular densities. Then here you can see breast shadow here with multiple metastatic disease and a chemo port, and you're not seeing the right breast. That's why the lung is appearing much darker. When you see, so you can, these are the clues when you don't see, when you only see one breast shadow, then you tend to see, could be of a breast with metastatic disease. And these are the things where you are looking at is basically a large lung mass in the left upper lobe of the lung. Then, for instance, these are the eclectic bands. These are the column segments of the lung. This is what we call atelectasis. And consolidations. So usually lobar pneumonias, they're limited by the fissures. You can see the right lower lobe pneumonia, the right upper lobe pneumonia, and right upper lobe pneumonia. Again, this is a pediatric chest X-ray. Why? How we say that? You can see the growth plates. And these are nowadays artificial intelligence is trying to recognize the patterns of pneumonia. I'm not going to take much of your time. I'll be explaining in detail regarding two entities which we day in and day out see. One is the pleural effusion, how much we can see on a radiograph, because most of them will be asking how much ml will it be there. So today's ultrasound has taken over. Ultrasound can diagnose as less as 10 ml of fluid within the chest cavity on your bedside, where a chest X-ray cannot diagnose it. So to see 200 to 300 ml, you'll see obliteration of the costophrenic angles. And to see the 2 liters of fluid, you'll see a concave margin of the lung.